Welcome to the third episode of Veils and Vocations. Today I'm here with Dr. David Whidden and Miss Keo Johnson. Um, Thanks for being here.
My pleasure.
What a gift it is to have you. And also thanks for being here, taking time out of your
Absolutely.
day to join me.
Yeah.
Anytime I can spend time with Keo is a good day.
It is same.
So true, so true.
Thank you.
Okay, so today we're going to be discussing Franciscan identity and vocation. And so, sort of, what does it mean to live out the Franciscan values and ideals and allow that to bleed into your vocation and sort of guide you in your life? I think that St. Francis has a lot to offer that people don't really pay attention to when it comes to vocation. Um, and I want to talk about that today.
Okay.
Because it's super good and helpful. Um, so to start, I want to talk about your background in Franciscan education and how has Francis sort of stepped into your life in a way regarding this.
Yeah. And the first biography that was written about St. Francis was written by a guy by the name of Thomas of Solano. And one of the things that's really fascinating about his account of Francis's life is he talks constantly, when he talks about time, he talks about it as in the year of Francis's conversion. That is, he'll say, in year 6 of Francis's conversion, Francis did this, this, and this. Or in year 13 of Francis's conversion, he'll do this, this, and this. And I've thought about that a lot with my own journey. So I'm starting my 15th year at FranU. And I really have begun to think of it like that this is the beginning of the 15th year of my conversion to Francis and of course always toward Christ. So it's been really a profound shaping of how I think and how I live from being here. So when I showed up here in 2011, I just needed a job as a professor of theology. I didn't care where I went. I applied. I mean, the academic job market for theologians is really competitive because there's not a lot of spots and there's a lot of theologians. And so like I probably applied to, I don't know, 20, 30 different jobs. And this is the only one where I got a on-campus interview. And so I was grateful to have the job. I had no idea. I'd never heard of this, little college. Never thought I would spend time in Baton Rouge. I'm a Florida Gator, so like living deep in the heart of enemy territory is a
We won't hold it
difficult
against you.
thing.
That's okay.
Anyway, wouldn't hold it against me either. Anyway, and so I really showed up as a Catholic theologian and actually a convert. So I came into the church in 2007. So I'd actually only been Catholic for 4 years. And I would say at that point, saints weren't my strong point. Fortunately, nobody asked me a lot about Francis while I was here, because I would have probably been in deep trouble and probably wouldn't have gotten the job. So I showed up at this place in 2011. I'm like, okay, like, what does it mean to be at a Franciscan institution? Like, who's this guy, Francis? And so I've spent a fair amount of time over the last 14 years thinking about that question, thinking about Francis, coming face to face with Francis and trying to take him really seriously, teaching about Francis, learning from Francis. And so again, I mean, I really do think that in many ways, he's impacted me quite profoundly. And so again, I think of this as sort of the beginning of the 15th year of my conversion.
Wow, that's really beautiful. So you said that 4 years after you converted to the Catholic Church, that's when you started here, right?
Right.
So relatively super new, right?
Right. Right. Baby
That's really
Catholic.
awesome.
I mean, I wasn't ready to be vice president of the United States yet, but yeah.
What was your vocation before, or your roles before?
So
So
this is
in
my
education.
second career. So
Yeah.
my first career, I was a university fundraiser. So I worked as a development officer for 15 years, including University of Florida for 10 years,
Wow.
where I did an MBA. And then I was at University of Texas Medical Branch for 5 years. And while I was there, I really had always had theological leanings at that point. And one of my friends mentioned that Southern Methodist had an extension campus down in Houston. So I was in Galveston. And so I started taking classes at SMU's extension campus in Houston and loved it and was good at it. And so after a year, I'm like, I want to finish this up. So I told my boss, I'm like, I'm quitting in a year. You've got a year to replace me and figure that out. And so after 2 years in Houston, I sold my house, quit my job, took my dog and moved to Dallas to finish up my master's degree, and then rolled right into the PhD from there. And then this is the only theological job I've ever had.
Well, so what was like, I guess, your first taste of the Franciscan like life and like you come here and you started like what does it mean to do that? Where did you like get introduced to these things?
Well, I mean, to be blunt, other than Sister Martha Ann, there wasn't any taste or introduction. I think it's fair to say that Dr. Sandra Harper, who was the president at the time, who was an excellent president here, was her emphasis was really on making the institution more Catholic, and the work that she did really laid the foundation for Dr. Holland when Dr. Holland came in. And so there's a lot of discussion about sort of Catholic identity and how we think about that, but really probably not that much going on here from a perspective of like Francis. So like one of the things I did is I developed a course on Francis. Now, one of the secrets of professors is sometimes we develop courses not so we can teach it, but so we can learn it. And so this is actually a case of that. I was like, okay, I'm going to teach a course on Francis so that I have time to really commit to learning more about Francis. And so I developed a course in about 2014 or 15 on Francis and taught that one a couple of times, including online, which wasn't really the great way to do it. So that course is still in our books, though we haven't taught it for a long time. I should probably pick that one back up
Definitely,
again.
that's really awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So speak a little bit more about the Catholic identity here at FranU. Talk about, how it shaped you personally, if you will, and what is the main focus as we continue to cultivate the identity within the Catholic Church here at FranU.
Sure. That question of Catholic identity can be a tricky one because, first of all, the Catholic Church is a broad institution, right? It's a worldwide institution. You're going to have perspectives all over the place of what it means to be a Catholic institution. We're fortunate that the Church gave us a document called Ex Corde Ecclesiae to help us think a little bit about that. And so really early on, I spent a fair amount of time really thinking with that particular text about like what it means here. And of course, it doesn't mean that everyone at FranU is Catholic or has to be Catholic or anything else. But what it does mean is it has to have a sort of a Christian inspiration, right? That it has a real commitment to the church's teachings, and at least relaying those, if not always every student agreeing with them. We don't expect every student to agree with every element, or necessarily even every faculty member with all elements of Catholicism. But nevertheless, we have an obligation to make sure that people know what that position actually is, right? And to treat it fairly and justly. So, I mean, ultimately, I think a genuinely Catholic institution is going to give everybody, whether they believe in Christianity or not, an encounter with Jesus Christ. It's just there's an evangelical element to the Catholic university that sometimes we miss. Sometimes they miss it because they're institutions where they think they're only getting really strong Catholic students, right? People who are really bought into their faith and super pious and super holy. And so they don't have as much of an evangelical attitude toward their own students and faculty, which I think sometimes overestimates what's going on in the lives of their students. Some are more interested in sort of, if you will, worldly success. And so I think, thinking through like, what does that mean here? One of the things that you'll see is we have very much of an outward facing approach to education, right? So we're not an ivory tower where our students aren't like contained, if you will, sort of in the university fences, so to speak. But it's much more about going out and serving, right? But also our own students and faculty and staff have their own needs and spiritual needs, intellectual needs. that I think we have to present to them as an opportunity for their own conversion. Whether or not they take that or not is certainly not up to us, right? That's the work of the Holy Spirit. Um, but at the very least, we need to, I think, present the case for Christianity, the case for Catholicism, the ideas, and particularly for those who are of goodwill, to find the places where they might interact with their own set of beliefs. Did that answer that question?
It does, yeah. One thing that I think set us apart, as you mentioned, from other Catholic, institutions, is that evangelical piece, because we do meet all of our students, faculty, right where they are,
Right.
and we are genuinely, compassionate about their growth, their spiritual growth.
Right, because it's
Here.
not just a matter of meeting them where they are, it's also a matter of not leaving them there either.
Right.
Yeah.
That's
Right.
good. Yeah.
Right. So, it's great. I mean, think about the parable of the Good Samaritan, right?
Mhm.
I mean, he meets the guy who's beaten up on the road,
Mm-hmm.
but he doesn't leave him there.
Right.
He takes him and takes care of him,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Now, some people may think, well, I don't need anybody to take care of me.
Mm-hmm.
But at least in the Christian and Catholic tradition, there's a sense in which we're all sort of harmed by the world we live in, by the sins that we commit or have been committed against us.
Right.
And so, yeah, we definitely are open to everybody here, but we're open to them in a way that says we're Catholic and we're
Mhm.
robustly so,
Right.
and that part's not going to change. But we welcome you here because of that,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
But we're not going to leave you where you are.
Right.
Hopefully, something here will change in you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that I like what you said there at the end. Like it's because of the Catholic nature of the school
Mhm.
in which we welcome you so well. Like it's not like we're taking you in just because we really want to just change you. Like there's actually like this ulterior motive and we don't care about you. It's like actually we just have learned through the faith of the Catholic Church that we care about your person just because
Full
of
stop.
who you are.
Right.
Mhm.
Right.
Right. So it's not instrumental. No, we're called to love and hospitality. Um, so yeah, we're not here to. So when I teach Intro to Theology on my first day, I mention to students um, that I do want them to change their minds, but not in the way they think necessarily of what it means. Because a lot of times when we think of changing minds, we think of going 180 degrees in a different direction,
Mhm.
right? But there's more than one way to change things, right? The other
Sure.
way to change somebody's mind is for them to deepen their understanding of something,
Mhm.
right? That's a
Yeah.
change of one's mind,
Right.
though not necessarily a change of one's direction.
Right.
So as I tell them, like, if you're a Catholic, then I hope you'll change your mind by having a deeper understanding of what it is you believe.
Mhm.
If you're an atheist, I hope that you have a deeper understanding of what it is that you're rejecting,
Mhm.
right? And so that is a change of one's mind,
Mhm.
right? So in that sense, we do want to change people's minds while they're here. We want them, if they, from a Catholic perspective, if they're Catholic and or Christian, I hope they do have a deepened understanding of what it is that they believe while they're here.
Mhm.
If they're not, I hope they have a better understanding of why they're not.
Mhm.
That's a change of one's mind, just maybe not the way we typically think about it.
Right.
Yeah.
I like the way you broke it down.
I know that's really cool because it can seem like if I don't make you change your mind or your belief, I failed.
Right.
And it's like
Yeah.
that's actually not true.
Right.
And
Well,
it's not persuasive either.
Yeah.
Right.
It's just a growth process.
but the other side to it as well is um, when you do try and change someone's mind in 180 degrees the way we typically think about it,
Mhm.
if you're a professor, you have a lot of power over your students,
Mhm.
right? And so
Absolutely.
that can seem abusive to students.
Mm.
So I learned this a long time when I was when I was a doctoral student at SMU and I was teaching a class. And I had this one student who was, I mean, so we were teaching in a Methodist seminary, and he was like a hardcore kind of right-wing Baptist guy. Good guy. I don't say that in any sort of pejorative way. And he was just really like, he didn't like the readings. He was constantly pushing back, constantly pushing back. And it's because, the stuff we were giving him to read felt like it was kind of an assault to him, like that he was being pushed in ways that he didn't want to be pushed.
Mhm.
And so finally, I found a textbook, a systematic theology textbook, that came from more of his perspective. And he's like, and I gave it to him. I said, try this. It's like, it's like, these are my people, right? And here are the ideas that make sense to me. And it still was, it was of course on systematic theology, systematic, so it met the goals of the course, but he just needed to hear a voice that didn't feel like it was just constantly telling him like, you're wrong,
Do or yeah.
right, or something like that. Rather like, no, it was like, you had to so that's the problem with trying to change people's minds in a way that can feel like an assault. And so you really have to be careful about that, especially as a professor, because students will either really resent you and then they'll shut down,
Right.
or they will, even worse, they'll tell you what they think you want to hear. Right? Then you have no idea what's really going on.
Yeah. I think I can't remember who was it said it, but like when you're discussing with someone and they believe something opposite, like the first step is receiving what they have to say.
Right.
Like you can't just be like, no, you're wrong. This is like,
Well,
you
you're
have
wrong on that, Ben.
Oh, okay. No, but like, yeah, like if we think about it, like all I'm really looking for is you to like listen out and like hear what I have to say. And if you're like telling me in a sense, you're not worth my time, this is what I have to say, why would I ever want to sit down and like have a real conversation?
Absolutely. And additionally, that calls though also for you to be authentic about what you believe to be true, right? Because otherwise, if you're like, oh, it doesn't matter, right? Then you're in a lot of cases being inauthentic. I mean, Q and I, we do orientation sessions for new students here. And one of the things I'm abundantly clear about, like we're a Catholic institution that entails certain commitments, like that we believe God exists, right? We believe, for instance, that there's this idea of sin and so on, and we're not going to change that for a student, even though we realize our students or faculty and staff may not agree with that, but we're not going to be to say, well, it doesn't really matter. I mean, as we would be inauthentic to who we are. But we want people to be authentic about where they're coming from too.
Right. And that's why we have our core values, right?
Yeah, definitely something that I think, yeah, the core values of the institution speak a lot to vocation and like what does it mean to live. I think they're all, I don't want to use the word attributes, but attributes of living out a vocation that we're all called to. I wanted to talk a little bit about like what the vocations of the not the vocations, what the core values of the university have sort of meant to you and ways that they've played into your life.
Yeah, one of my colleagues up at the health system, Rafael Flores, and I have been having a lot of conversations though about whether they're better thought of as values or virtues. Values can be kind of a weird term and hard to sort of pin down to exactly what. So you'll see institutions all the time say, "Oh, this doesn't fit with our institutional values." I'm like, well, really, what are your values? Like, how do you do that? So I actually prefer to think about them in many ways as virtues. Okay, so those are sort of enduring characteristics of an individual or perhaps an institution that are sort of in pursuit of certain kind of human excellences. And so, I think about those in the terms of like, when we're making decisions, when we're thinking about how do we act in community, are we bearing those virtues in the work that we do, right? So, take something like justice, of course, which is one of our core values or virtues. Are we? Because it's one thing to say, are we acting in accord with our values? It's another thing to say, are we acting virtuously with justice, right? So, what does that look like? Well, what does it look like with my students? Am I treating them justly in how I grade them and how I treat them, the exceptions I make, or whatever the case may be? Are my interactions with my colleagues just, right? Am I being honest with them? Am I making sure that we give people a just wage, right, as a leader in the institution? So, those are important sort of questions for me to think about with regard to my relationships to my students, my colleagues. and then as well throughout the community. So, absolutely, we're always asking that question, believe it or not, a lot of questions about justice or humility. Now, there's one you can't really ever claim for yourself, right? To claim humility is to lack it. So you can't ever brag about your humility. That just doesn't really work, right? Okay. But there's a certain sort of openness to others, I think, and a realization of one's own limits. That's a humility that calls for really engaging with a variety of people because it turns out that none of us know everything,
Right.
right? And so it's precisely in learning from others, other really smart people. That's the joy of working at a university, right? You're surrounded by a lot of really smart people that you can learn from, and being open to that your solutions aren't always the right solutions is important. Or to think about humility as really making a space for other people to grow. I think is a really kind of powerful way of thinking about it. That is, you know, instead of telling everybody how I want things done, is what a joyous work of surprise it is to say, okay, go do this, and to see how somebody solves this problem or comes up with something in a way that would be very different than how I would do it. And that's, to me, that's actually really quite a fun thing to do. And well, yeah, it's humbling because I don't have all the solutions. In fact, like the question I typically ask people, like, are there problems I can help you solve?
Yeah.
Right. But for the most part, I want people to solve their own problems because that's actually how they grow and gain agency.
Right. Yeah, I think that it's very easy to because I do hear what you're saying, and I feel like it can be easy to like recognize like actually I've been given this community this of people that are like helping me grow to see that there are other ways. And then I feel like it's also easy to be on the other side of like, well, actually like I'm here and I could do these things and I actually don't need like your way of doing things. I can do it for myself. Um, like what are the yeah, speaking about humility, like how do you help instill that? Um, like yeah, as vice president of mission, like these are things that we ask of our staff to do well and
Well, I think it depends. I mean, there's no greater source of humility than falling on your face a few times, right?
The number one lesson.
Right. I
We
mean,
want to
so
avoid
so
that.
let's take you for example, Ben. Right. I mean, so you're our student government president for the next year, right? So you have a short time to learn and to sort of do what you want to do. Um, and what a great age to do it at, right? Because you're now how old?
just turned 22 yesterday.
Happy birthday.
Thank you.
I would sing happy birthday, but it would ruin the whole podcast.
We'll save it for later.
Yeah, we'll save it for later. 22. So you didn't have to like get drunk this year.
No,
That's great.
not this year.
Okay, good. All right. So with like young and new employees, I mean, I talk about like it's actually really good for them to make mistakes, and hopefully we've got them in jobs where they're low stakes to their mistakes, right? So if you mess up some SGA event, the world's not going to end, right? And you'll learn from it hopefully, and improve and take that in going forward. On the other hand, you don't want your vice presidents and presidents to make a whole lot of mistakes because the stakes are higher, right?
Right.
If the president says, let's start this new program, it's going to cost us $5 million a year that we don't have, right? Then that has a huge impact, not just on the president, but on everybody around them. So hopefully as people get older and more experienced and rise up through organizations, they get better at learning from the mistakes or even better from learning from the mistakes of others. Right, so that's part of the growth that should come for young people. They get to make mistakes in low stakes areas, and so it's part of for me. It's important to let people make those mistakes and to let them have those experiences, and then to help them. I mean, on the other hand, I mean, I'm not going to just let you crash the car, so to speak, right? like oh, no, hit the brakes, because you don't want to do anything that's going to really permanently harm you or the institution. But I think that's the best way for people to learn. Now, the key, of course, is I always tell my own children is it's okay to make mistakes, but try and make new ones, and not to repeat the old ones. So that's part of it as well. That's how people grow.
Yeah.